Something is happening in the Middle East right now that most people are not paying attention to. And if you are not watching this closely, you are going to miss one of the most dangerous turning points in modern history. The situation between America, Iran, and Israel has reached a level that nobody predicted even 6 months ago. The tensions are not just rising, they are boiling over. And the entire world is sitting on top of this pressure cooker waiting to see what explodes first. This is not just another news cycle. This is not just politicians talking. Real military movements are happening. Real economic consequences are already hitting ordinary people across the globe. And the decisions being made right now in Washington, Tehran, and Tel Aviv are going to shape the next decade of world history. Stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is going to change the way you see this conflict completely. Let us start with where things actually stand today. For months now, the United States has been maintaining a heavy military presence across the Gulf region. Aircraft carriers, destroyer ships, refueling jets, special forces units positioned across multiple bases in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and beyond. The message from Washington has been clear. America is not going anywhere. America is watching, and America is ready. But here's what the Pentagon did not expect. Iran did not blink. Iran did not back down. Instead, Iran did something far more calculated, far more strategic, and far more dangerous than a direct confrontation. Iran began a slow and systematic campaign of pressure that is now pushing America into a corner it cannot easily escape from. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most important stretch of water on this planet right now. About 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through this narrow waterway every single day. Every single day. Think about that for a moment. 1/5 of all the oil that powers cars, factories, hospitals, military vehicles, and economies across the entire world moves through a stretch of water that Iran sits right next to. Iran has made it very clear, through statements, through military exercises, through the positioning of its naval forces, that it has the ability and the willingness to make life extremely difficult for anyone trying to move through that corridor. And the United States knows this. The U.S. Navy knows this, and that is why there has been such an enormous American military buildup in the region, because losing the Strait of Hormuz even for a few weeks would send oil prices into territory that would trigger a global economic crisis overnight. Now here's where things get even more serious. Iran is not operating alone in this conflict. That is something the American media keeps trying to minimize and downplay, but the reality on the ground tells a completely different story. Iran has spent the last 2 decades building a network of allied forces across the entire Middle East. In Yemen, the Houthi movement has demonstrated that it has the capability to fire missiles and drones at targets hundreds of miles away. In Lebanon, Hezbollah remains one of the most heavily armed non-state military forces on Earth. In Iraq, there are multiple militia groups with direct ties to Tehran that have been carrying out operations against American assets. This is what military analysts call a multi-front pressure strategy, and it is working, because America cannot fight on 4 or 5 fronts simultaneously without stretching its resources to a breaking point. The economic dimension of this conflict is something that Pulse America News has been tracking very carefully, and what we are seeing right now in global markets is deeply alarming. Oil prices have been climbing steadily despite everything Washington has tried to do to push them back down. Donald Trump made it a public goal to bring energy prices down. The logic was simple. Cheaper oil means lower inflation. Lower inflation means a stronger economy. A stronger economy means political wins. But the market is not cooperating, because the market understands something that political speeches cannot change. When the world's most important oil shipping lane is under threat, prices go up. It does not matter what anyone says at a press conference. The market responds to reality. And the reality is that the Gulf region is less stable today than it has been in years. China's role in all of this deserves serious attention, because it is something that most Western analysts are completely glossing over. China has been making very deliberate financial moves during this entire crisis period. Chinese investors and state-backed funds have been buying gold at an extraordinary pace. When tension rises in the Middle East, smart money moves into gold because gold holds its value when everything else becomes uncertain. China understands this better than anyone. Beijing has been encouraging its financial institutions to accumulate gold reserves while simultaneously working to expand the use of the Chinese yuan in international oil trade. This is not just an economic move. This is a long-term strategic strike at the foundation of American global power. Because American power is built on one thing above everything else, the fact that the whole world buys and sells oil in US dollars. If that changes even partially, the ripple effects for the American economy would be enormous. Let us talk about what is happening with America's allies right now, because this is crucial. Washington has been reaching out to its G7 partners, to NATO members, to Gulf Arab states, trying to build a broader coalition of support for its position against Iran, and the response it has been getting is not what the White House was hoping for. European nations are facing their own energy crisis. They are still recovering from the economic damage caused by the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the disruption to gas supplies that followed. The last thing European governments want right now is another major conflict in a region that directly controls their energy supply. Germany, France, Italy, these are countries dealing with slow economic growth, rising energy costs, and politically restless populations. They can't afford to get dragged into a military confrontation in the Gulf. And so when Washington comes asking for deeper commitments and stronger support, the answer coming back from European capitals is polite but very firm. We will talk, we will meet, we will have another discussion next month, but we are not going to war with Iran on your behalf.
Iran's foreign ministry has been issuing statements with a level of confidence and directness that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Tehran is not speaking the language of a country that feels cornered or desperate. Tehran is speaking the language of a country that believes it holds significant leverage in this standoff. And when you look at the actual facts on the ground, it is very difficult to argue with that assessment. Iran controls geography that cannot be replicated or replaced. Iran has built military capabilities over 30 years specifically designed to neutralize American technological advantages. And Iran has allies spread across an enormous stretch of territory from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the borders of Afghanistan. This is not a small regional player making noise. This is a country that has spent decades preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation and is now executing its strategy with remarkable discipline. The situation for American military forces stationed across Gulf bases has become genuinely complicated. Running major military operations at this scale for this long puts enormous pressure on equipment, on personnel, and on supply chains. Refueling operations, maintenance cycles, troop rotations, all of these logistical realities add up. And the longer this situation continues without a clear resolution, the more strain builds up on the entire system. Military analysts who study these things carefully have pointed out that sustained, high-tempo operations in a contested environment are extraordinarily expensive, not just in terms of money, but in terms of readiness. Equipment wears down, personnel fatigue sets in, and the political will to sustain an open-ended military commitment without a defined objective becomes harder and harder to maintain, both in Washington and among the American public. Israel's position in all of this is one of the most complex pieces of this entire puzzle. Israel has been conducting its own operations targeting what it describes as Iranian-linked infrastructure and weapons networks across the region. The Israeli military has demonstrated repeatedly that it has both the capability and the willingness to strike targets at long distances when it believes its security requires it. But Israel also faces a fundamental strategic reality. It is a small country surrounded by a very complicated neighborhood, and the depth of Iranian commitment to the various allied forces surrounding Israel means that any major escalation carries risks that even the most confident military planners have to take seriously. Israel's Iron Dome and layered air defense systems are impressive, but no defensive system in the world is designed to handle unlimited simultaneous incoming threats indefinitely. Every system has its limits, and Iran, along with its allied networks, has spent considerable effort trying to understand and probe exactly where those limits are. The global internet infrastructure angle of this story is one that almost nobody in mainstream media is giving proper attention to. Undersea fiber optic cables carry the overwhelming majority of the world's internet traffic. We're talking about close to 97% of all global data moving through physical cables laid along the ocean floor. The cables running through the Red Sea and near the Persian Gulf region connect Europe, the Middle East, South Asia, and East Asia. If those cables were ever seriously disrupted, the consequences would go far beyond slow internet speeds. Stock markets rely on fiber optic connections for the millisecond transactions that move trillions of dollars every single day. Banking systems, payment networks, supply chain communications, military command systems, all of these depend on that physical infrastructure. This is not a hypothetical concern. In 2008, when undersea cables were cut in the Mediterranean region, it took weeks to fully restore connectivity, and the economic impact was felt across multiple continents. The stakes today, in a far more digitally dependent world, would be incomparably higher. What does all of this mean for the ordinary person sitting at home watching this unfold? It means that the decisions being made by a small number of leaders in Washington, Tehran, Tel Aviv, Beijing, and Riyadh right now will have direct consequences on the price of fuel you put in your car, on the cost of groceries you buy at the market, on the interest rates on your home loan, on whether your country's economy grows or contracts in the coming years. This conflict is not something happening far away that does not touch your daily life. The global economy is deeply interconnected. Oil price shocks travel fast, financial market disruptions travel even faster, and when major powers start making moves that shake the foundations of the international financial system, ordinary people always end up paying the price. The question everyone is asking right now is, where does this go from here? And the honest answer is that nobody knows for certain. What we do know is that the diplomatic off-ramps that existed even 6 months ago are becoming fewer and harder to access. The level of distrust between Washington and Tehran is at an historic high. The domestic political pressures on leaders in both countries make it very difficult for anyone to be seen making significant concessions, and the involvement of so many other actors, China, Russia, Gulf Arab states, European powers, Israeli government, Houthi forces in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iraqi militia groups, means that this situation has far more moving parts than any single government can fully control. When you have that many actors, that many competing interests, and that many weapons in one of the world's most strategically vital regions, the margin for miscalculation becomes dangerously thin. Pulse America News will continue to follow every development in this story as it unfolds, because this is exactly the kind of situation where staying informed is not just interesting, it is essential. The mainstream media will give you fragments, it will give you headlines, it will give you the official statements and the carefully managed press releases. But right here on Pulse America News with your host, Kundi, we go deeper. We connect the dots. We look at the economic forces, the military realities, the geopolitical strategies, and the human consequences all together, because that is the only way to truly understand what is happening in our world. If this video gave you a clearer picture of what is really going on in the Gulf right now, then do one thing right now before you scroll away. Hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what is actually at stake. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I want to know what you think about where this is all heading. This is Kundi for Pulse America News. Stay informed, stay alert, and we'll see you in the next one.